there is a answer that can be given saying this is the rule or there's a thumb rule that exists or any of those things, because I think it really depends on the individual, the organization, and the kind of interest and commitment that you give to it. It's like nurturing a plant. There's no rule to say that okay, it's going to take 1 month and it's going to start growing. It's not the way that it works. Yeah, there are fundamental things that any organization will have to kind of start and set up and do, but it really depends on how soon you want to go to market, so you can actually do it. So depending on the kind of time and involvement that you put in, you can actually do it very fast. But there are certain basic essentials that you will definitely need, like I think Professor Swaminathan was just talking about. To begin with, you need a basic website to start, and then there's a whole set of options depending on the kind of product you have or the service you have or the kind of customer you want to actually reach out to. So then you start planning for that to see this is what it is. And I don't think there is you don't reach an end. It's like an ongoing process. It's a continuous process which you will have to, sir, you want to say? Which you will have to keep going through all the things. So there's really no timeline to say this is what it's going to really take. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to talk about a few case studies and some live things that we've done. Okay, unfortunately I have not put any B2B specific cases here, but I think I'll speak about it as we go, but they are as much relevant because I think it's all about talking to people and how they react to it and what they actually do. So to kind of So the question is actually this, I think whatever I'm going to talk about is how do we use what we've really heard so far, okay? So the beginning of this question starts with, how do we kind of define, how do you create communication for online versus offline? I'm not so sure how many of you used to offline communication, what is that you really think about it, etc. Any thoughts on it? Do you think there's a difference between online and traditional? When I say traditional, let's say television or print or radio, or any of those things. Okay, I'll answer that. Fundamentally, there are two differences, the way you kind of lean forward and you lean back, When you consume a medium, are you actually moving forward and listening to it or reading it, or do you actually lay back and then just do it? Just think about it. When you watch television, most of the times you're just lying down and just watching something. It's more like, it's just in the passing. You just consume that as information that way. When you look at, say, print, most of the time, especially in the mornings, etc., you'll be reading intently on what's written there, okay? And I think websites, in a lot of cases, is something you read very closely to see what it is that you're doing. But when you go to, say, social media pages, you kind of flip through them. You just glance. You're just looking at Insta. You just keep moving. So I think it's very critical, or it's important that you should look at how the audience is going to actually consume this data for you to actually say what is the kind of communication you need to start giving to them, because while there are all mediums, okay, how you deliver a message or how you give out a communication is very critical, because it should connect to the audience. If it does not connect to the person, then there's absolutely no this thing. In fact, I think we live in a world where there's a deluge of information. There's so much of data that we are surrounded with. Most of the times we are actually oblivious to it. We don't even see what's happening around us. We just kind of keep moving forward. So that's the first part of the information. I'm going to keep skipping a few of the points because I'll speak about them and then go. The second part is, I was just talking about passive versus active communication. If you look at it, we are all in a mode where, we are doing things very actively. So the question is, what should our communication be? Should it be passive, or should it actually get the person to actively talk to us? So which is where we talk about, let's say the conventional mediums in a print, there is an ad and there's an ad. There's nothing more you can do about it. But in digital, that's not the case. You say something, there's an opportunity for the customer to respond back to you. You can have dialogues, you can have trilogues, there are conversations, there are groups. So you need to see how you can leverage all of them and put that to use for your benefit. Yeah. The other part of it is, I think, while information is there, I think there's also a huge need, there's a huge thirst for knowledge. But the thirst for knowledge might be in any different area, and I think all of us have our own areas of interest. Like for example, in advertising, I don't think we go to, let's say, rediff.com and check out anything, but there are niche portals like say AFAX or agencynews.com and things like that, which we will read as a matter of routine every morning to see what's happening in my industry. I'm sure each one of you have those forums and blogs that you actually visit, and I'm sure there are those passions that you have. Let's say you are a biking enthusiast, you are definitely going to be part of some group where you're going to be reading about it, seeing what is happening there, etc. So there is a thirst, or there is a huge need for knowledge and information and sharing and all of that that's happening, which we should take into account. But it may not be the same for everybody. Your interest will be different, his interest would be different, her interest would be very different from it. But everybody is looking for information in some format or the other, and therefore we need to see how we can make our brand or our product actually relevant to the audience and speak to them at that particular point in time. Yeah. The other part of it is, how do we actually kind of start making things relevant and talk to them? So there are a few fundamental rules that we talk about, and the first thing I think we should remember is this. I'm not going to touch too much on the website, but in a website, nobody actually comes there by accident. So we should know that when somebody lands up on my website, he's there with an intent, okay? There is a purpose or a reason why somebody has come there. So I need to make sure that I give them whatever that they are most likely to be looking for, which will again come out of defining who's my audience, what's my purpose, what's the brand role that I'm going to be actually playing. But this is something that we should remember, and therefore say that, when somebody comes to my website, I should give them what they are looking for. Yeah. And the second part of it is, again, we say about this, on a newspaper, I'm reading news and I might just happen to see an ad, but that's never the case here, okay? We are always competing for the customer's attention. We are not competing with other brands. That's another fundamental difference in the way we should look at the way we create communication for these spaces. Yeah, I think this is what we were talking about. In fact, I have a very interesting thing. I believe in the 1980s, the attention span of the human beings was about 17 seconds, okay? And it's been slowly reducing. And I believe it's today at some 8 seconds or lesser. And I believe the goldfish has an attention span of 4 seconds. So it's like we don't know where we are going. So we are very, very impatient. And as we go and we evolve, we are going to become even more impatient. So trying to grab somebody's attention and have a conversation with them is going to become the most important thing, because only when you start talking and they listen to you can you actually communicate. So how you deliver a message and how do you get them interested in you is also going to become very critical to the thing. So there's one particular digital planning framework that we use. So I'm just going to take you through it quickly. I'm not going to take a lot of time discussing it. But this model actually talks about, this is coming at it from a pure, how do we get results and output out of any digital marketing activity that you do. So it's purely from a business perspective, okay? And when I say output, it can be anything. It could be sales, it could be awareness, it could be getting leads, it could be any of these objectives, but it is focused on some kind of an ROI in terms of what it needs to deliver. So you need to define, before you start any campaign or you start anything, you need to define by setting goals for yourself on what really are my goals, That's the first part of it. And the second part of it is, I think, objectives, which is you say, what is my goals? You should articulate it and be very clear. This is my objective for this campaign, and therefore what is it that I'm going to do? And therefore you should be able to define that. The third part of it is, I think we spoke about this in a great length in terms of, how do we actually do the segmentation? How do we kind of do the positioning and all of those things? So that's very critical, because you need to define, because if you don't define it, then you will be everything to everybody, and there is nothing called, I think it's a very popular example. If you're going to walk in the middle of the road, you're sure shot getting hit by a bus. You should take a decision. I want to be on the left, I want to be on the right, but you cannot be somebody who's just sitting on the fence. So you need to be something to somebody. You cannot be everything to everybody. You need to be clear on how you want to define that. And we'll talk about that again, because digital offers you the power to actually be very specifically something and not, everything to everybody. Then comes down things like tactics. So then I think those are most of the tools and things that you will kind of use. Like for example, in social we talk about, every time you do something, it needs to give the person a social currency. Just think about it, we put up a post, I'm eating this, I'm drinking soup at mainland China today. Why do we actually do that? I'm standing at Changi airport. We all do that, okay? I think people keep seeing this. You keep wondering, why is it? Because it's just a social currency. Somebody feels that, when I say this, it makes me feel that, I've done something important, or I've done something, this thing. And I think it's growing, but there's a lot of social currency and connect and different things. Those are different tools that we need to look at for us to get into creating communication. The next part of it is about actions and then control. So this is like a cyclical process, because in everything, when you set a goal, you need to come back and measure whether it's delivered in terms of its results or the goals that you actually set out to do. Yeah. So therefore, defining the OVP, or what we call an online value proposition, is very, very important, and it's critical. If you define that, the rest everything will kind of fall in place, because you know what you should expect your digital campaign to perform or your digital marketing activities to perform. Yeah. So the first case that I'm going to talk about is actually of a company called Symphony. They are also a startup. In fact, they're a startup in the healthcare space. It's in a it's a medical breakthrough technology, if I have to say. It's a device which I think you can see here as a tool. So it's basically a device that connects the brain and the muscle together, and it helps somebody who's affected. Basically, it helps someone who's affected by stroke. Actually, it helps multiple people who have a disability or who've been affected by when the hand and the muscles don't coordinate. It helps them regain that back by helping them kind of redo the same exercise or the therapy back again. Today there's a lot of gap between how it gets delivered. So this is something which is being created by an Indian from NTU Singapore, and they've just kind of got out of the incubation and they're just getting into production and they're just launching the whole thing. So they're launching it across the world. In India is where they're going commercial first, okay? So this is going through clinical trials. In India, they have actually opened what is called as a Symphony Center. So this whole case study is about how Symphony, which is a small startup and a very technical thing, is actually going about doing the thing. So this is something that we are working on currently. So the first thing that it actually helps you with is, and I'm going to talk about how digital helps and what is the strategy for digital in a startup like this. The first thing that it actually helps is, or the beginning part of this thing is, first you need to estimate the market potential to see, where is the potential? Do I even have a product? Who do I talk to? Who am I going to be speaking to? So this is actually the universe of the thing, because in India, again, we were talking about the OVP and online value proposition. So the whole thing is about, as a device, it can actually help multiple disease states. From stroke to cerebral palsy to autism to multiple things. But as a strategy, it's been decided that we will single-mindedly go after stroke, because that's the larger group and we should stand for something. Let's not try to be multiple things to multiple people. While, for example, in a market like Singapore, they're going through clinical trials on different things, but on a commercial part, it's very clear that let's focus on stroke, which is a large market as far as India goes, and there is a huge need for it. And as per the estimate, going by the numbers, it's like almost like there are more than 5.5 crore Indians who are affected by it. Yeah. The other part of it is, we were looking at, how do we kind of estimate and see what is this. So this is a test launch phase. So it's only happening in Bombay. So it's only Mumbai which is the market for it. So there's roughly about, what we say is, there are about 5,000 odd searches that happens on a monthly basis in Bombay, only related to stroke and specific keywords, okay? So what this kind of tells you is that, yes, there is an opportunity and there are people looking for it. If this is the stated search on a small set of keywords, you will actually find a lot more people in that audience space, so you will be able to reach out to them. So it tells you that this is a potential, and yes, I can leverage it to get audience. The second part of it is, how do we kind of reach them? So we've said there is a potential, I've got a product and I've got a potential here. So there are multiple things on how do I actually reach the stroke affected, okay? So there's online, which is one part of it. Then there is networking and events, because This is a category where, the doctors, the neurologists, the physiotherapists have a huge role to play. And I think it's not because somebody says I'm going to adopt it. I need to know that, it is good, it's safe, it's approved, my neurologist has suggested or recommended it, therefore I can go talk to them. So it needs to use a variety of formats and methods to do it. So these are some of the things that's actually happening currently. So there's online that's going on, there's networking, which is then being leveraged on online to see how we can, let's say there's a doctor or there's a neurologist who's talking about symphony in one of his sessions. That video gets captured and then it's put up saying that this is what Dr. Patilkar had to speak, or this is what he had to say. Or you get a patient, somebody who's benefited from it, to come and actually speak about how it has actually benefited them. It's like, I think we were talking about advocacy in a big way. So when a patient says that this product or this solution has helped me, the believability just goes up. If he's tried and it's worked for him, let me also give it a try. So it really works from that perspective. And community building and multiple other things. But coming to this specifically, since this session is more on the online part of it, so on online there are various tools that we are actually using. There is paid advertising, there's organic search, there's social, then there's digital PR and offline PR. But each of them has its own rule, and role that it's actually going to play. For example, on paid, we are using different formats like search and, I don't know, display something where you use banners and images to actually reach out to people, etc. And videos, sponsored links, there are different formats. These are just different formats within the medium that's available. But the role is very clear that it needs to help create awareness, it helps to create interest building and inquiry. Okay, so it's also meant to generate leads. It's supposed to help people get to know about Symphony and register somewhere, and then they will be actually contacted so that they get a demo or they get a free trial session, etc. Organic is what we mean by the website. The website has its own role, which is primarily it has to be seen as a domain authority. When I say domain authority, when somebody looks for data on stroke or about stroke rehab, the site needs to be seen as somebody who has the information, who is an expert in that space for people to actually start buying into that story. And it also works from a point of showcasing testimonials, from a point of other referrals from clinical partners, therapists, a range of people actually talking about it. And since it's also a technology driven solution, technology also kind of comes into play in it. And social has its own role, which is more about reassuring. It's not going to be leading the way in terms of lead generation or any of that, but it's more of sharing stories and positive messages of how this is a solution that will help you and to get things together. I'm sure you've heard of it, and in healthcare it's a rule that when there's somebody who is already affected by some disease or some state, you really need to be nice to them. You need to be extra caring, you need to be very positive about what you speak. You cannot put the fear of God into them. So the social platforms actually work towards reassuring people on that. And PR again works from an FAQs point of view, showcasing various technological advances, the partners, what the therapists have to speak and things like that. So each medium actually has a different role to play. And the last in this one, which we are implementing, is also about what we call community building. Okay. Again, social, in conventional formats, we would have said there is a place and anybody who's affected by stroke or you're interested in stroke can come here, there is a session that's going to happen, etc. But online provides a platform where anybody who's interested in this space can actually come together and share their own things. It's like, there is a platform which is created. I think today you will see it for, say, bike enthusiasts, you will find it for people who have a passion for music, you will find it for people who have a passion for theatre. There are multiple things you find. So this is another group which actually talks about stroke and stroke related things. In fact, there are multiple groups on autoimmune diseases and things like that. So these are all various tools. The whole point is to showcase that, digital does not mean that, I only do paid advertising or I do Google AdWords or I have to do only Facebook, etc. There's a lot of things beyond that. Anything that's enabled by technology, that's available and that's connecting different people together. All of them come into this, and for every product and every brand, you need to look for and seek out what is that thing that's actually going to work for you. And a lot of times they all work in tandem. You need to find the right mediums, you need to see the right messaging in each of them, and then kind of deploy it. Yeah. So that's broadly about Symphony. Like for example, this is not their website. You can check out the website, it's symphony.in. This is actually what we call a landing page. Okay, in the landing page, the primary focus, if you see, is all about the lead generation form. The form that you see here is the primary purpose. Okay, when somebody comes onto the page, we want to generate as many inquiries as possible, because the agenda is simple. We want more and more people who are interested in stroke or who have something related to stroke to come in and register, so that we can reach out to them. So it's a set of very clear information on how does it work, what are the benefits it gets, a testimonial from a patient, and it just talks about that. It does not go beyond that. Okay, you can ask me why is that you don't send people to a website, because in a website typically there are multiple tabs. People kind of get lost, they click somewhere, they move somewhere else, and then they just go out, and you don't really know who's the person who came looking for you. But in a landing page, you kind of focus on them, and then if they're really interested in you, give them critical information, then they reach out to you, and then you can actually talk to them one-on-one, where your conversions actually get higher.
I have a doubt regarding landing pages. So landing pages basically directly have a call to action for whatever is the main focus, right? So when you're optimizing your SEO or whatever the person finds search engine, should that be a website or a landing page?
See, normally you optimize for a website, okay, because your website will have a lot more content, a lot more data. That doesn't mean that your landing pages don't have to be optimized. There are certain basic rules like titles, metadata, keywords, the loading time of a page. Those are all metrics that have to be worked on, okay. But from a long-term search optimization perspective, you will always optimize your website, because that's where you will have a lot of data. And in fact, in a website, you optimize different pages for different purposes. Okay, so like if you have a product, like Symphony is very single. I mean, since it's very focused, there's just one product and one service, so they don't have multiple things. I shall go to another category where you will see that their interests lie in diverse products and categories. So you can optimize a page of a website for a specific set of keywords. So typically, if you're going to optimize, you should do it on your website, but there are certain basic rules on any landing page website. Those have to be followed, whichever category you are in. Yeah. So this is just to showcase that, you know, this simple communication. Yes. Yeah. See, typically in e-commerce, you will not do a landing page. Okay, the reason is in e-commerce the agenda is simple. I want people to come and buy my product. Okay, so you send them to the page where the product is, so that you can click on it and you will make a purchase. Your objective is clearly defined. I want sales. You go into a landing page in cases where you cannot make a sale. Like I think in a lot of B2B cases, etc., you cannot make a sale, and you also need to look at the time that you're going to spend in terms of getting a customer, you know. In fact, even in classic FMCG cases, we have seen cases where customers come back to the website 26 times before they actually make a purchase, you know. You'll be surprised on the category if I say what that category is. It's for purchase of a diaper. Okay, I mean, we were running a campaign for a brand called Mom and Me. To buy diapers, the average time, the number of times people came, checked out the site before they actually purchased a diaper is about 26. So landing pages are done when you cannot make a sale. So typically in most B2B and cases like that, you do a landing page so that you can capture information of what the person wants, you know, so you will know who the customer is. So you can, once they fill in a form, you tell them that I'll send you a specific case study, or I'll send you a white paper in terms of something. Like white papers is something that's typically done for most software guys, you know. So once you fill in, you are interested, then I'll send you a, fill in your details, I'll send you a thing. So these are ways of just getting to know who your customer is. But it can be created for any category, but for e-com it doesn't make sense, because there you really want to sell.
May I also add, say for instance in e-commerce, that the search is is a product, right? Therefore, landing page really does not matter too much, right? Typically, there will be search. You go to Google and put, XYZ product. Okay. Now, why should I have an intermediary there to take it to a landing page? Landing page happens when you normally do it in cases where you have generated leads, right? And you have multiple products. This landing page helps us, somebody said CTA, to take you directly to what you want. So it's an intermediary. But as I said, web page is your heart and soul. That's what needs to be optimized. Not that you cannot get it, because most content anyway of your landing page, the origin will be of the content part of it.
Yes.
Can you shed some more light on the organic part of
On the organic part of?
methods of the paid organic?
Okay, see, right now I'm talking about the thing. I'm going to go into another case study where we will cover on the thing, but fundamentally paid is when, see, organic is done on your website, okay, which is you optimize your website in terms of search terms, in terms of titles, etc. So with you basically will get people who are looking for you or your service to come into your site automatically, which is without actually making payments. But the thing is, organic is healthy and it takes time. It does not happen overnight, because basically I'm using Google as a common thing, because in India Google is the leader as far as search goes. So they index the pages and then it comes back to you every time you kind of search for it, okay? But paid campaigns are when you actually advertise. You are actually going to be spending money, so it works very fast, okay, in terms of it. And actually the line is blurring. Today you really don't make out between, like for example, if you look at a search listing, you'll not be able to make out, except for the small thing which will say ad on top. The rest of it will look exactly the same way an organic listing will look in terms of the things, and things that get used and optimized. I don't think it's visible here, but these are some of the way the ads come. These are all paid ads. I don't think it's visible here, but you will be able to see an ad. This is an ad of Symphony, which is on a search term called stroke treatment, I think, okay, and this is about stroke recovery, etc. You will see. So this is actually a paid ad. This is an organic listing, but you will not be actually able to make out much in terms of it, because that's how the way the system works. Unless you are very conscious about it, you won't see it. So, okay, and while these are on the AdWords part of it, this is also on the Facebook page. I think one of the things we were talking about is you cannot just do product posts. You need to look at things, how it will add value to it. For example, on the Symphony page, we talk about how there are devices which will help a person affected by stroke do things that they normally can't. Like they can't eat normally, they can't sign a check. So you help them with information that adds value to them. So we need to look at things which is going to make things interesting and will add value to each person. So there are posts which talk about inspiring stories of people who fought odds to go on to be successful in life, So you need to look at things which are a little more lateral and not just keep selling the product, because then there's no reason. It becomes too much of a hard sell. So you need to find that balance between things and then make it work. Yeah. So I thought I'll speak about this primarily because it's possibly more relevant to a startup and how it really functions. But I'm going to talk about another case study which I'll run through quite quickly. Okay, which is a category called Kaya Skin Clinic. Okay, this is actually a campaign that we have done almost like about, I think this is done in about 10 years back. Okay, and it is one of, it's an award-winning campaign in terms of what has happened, etc. But I think it was very early for its own time, but it kind of sets the pace in terms of how digital can be leveraged, and if these are the things that we could do 10 years back, today I think you can do 100 times this. Okay, so the opportunities have evolved, the kind of targeting you can do, the kind of options that you get everywhere across all the social platforms, across all the digital mediums that's available is tremendous. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly run through this. So this is an award that we won for this particular campaign. So Kaya is part of Marico, which is, okay, it's one of the leading skincare groups in India. So they offer a whole set of services and solutions which is related to beauty treatments, problem acne, anti-aging, a whole set of things, okay, just to set a context. And this is actually a very high involvement category, primarily talks to women, okay, but it's a very high involvement category because if I'm going to do something on my face, I need to think 5 times before I can actually do it. I'm not going to take a risk. So that's the genre of space that we're talking about, okay. So I think we were talking about, so people make a decision based on who's the person who's going to handle me, what is the kind of reputation, what are the kind of conversations, what is the ratings that people have given for it. All of these things make a huge difference to the kind of service that I will pick up, okay. And since I said, you know, this is like about 10 years old, there was this thing about, I don't think women shared their names, their email numbers, phone IDs, phone numbers, etc. on the internet. Never. It was very, that's where we kind of started. It was like, you know, will they actually do it? And I think this was a case study that went on to prove that people do if they find value in what you're actually telling them. Okay, so that's what this case study does. But since we are on a topic of digital marketing, and since you were also asking me about how do you differentiate between paid, organic, etc., this is specifically a format or a method that we do for identifying keywords. It's not necessarily paid, because in any search campaign or any search marketing campaign, the starting point is with the kind of keywords that you use. So let's say I'm talking about stroke. If you are related to stroke, you need to identify everything that's related to stroke and only be in that space, okay. So we have a model which actually comes out of mainline advertising. So what we say is, you know, when you generate keywords, the first one is what we call circle one, you know. When somebody is searching for your brand or its related features, you should make sure that you are present on those keywords. You should optimize, you should bid on those keywords, but you should be present because somebody is looking for your service or something related to you. The second circle is what we call your competition. Okay, there's somebody searching for your competition, which means that person is looking for a solution exactly what you are providing, but he is not looking for you. He is not positively disposed to you, or rather he is very neutral. Okay, so you need to go after them. That's the second group. Third is what we call related or audiences who are in the related categories. Okay, so somebody who's very close, who's a likely audience for you. Fourth is what we call a lifestyle. Okay, why does this model actually work is, in paid advertising, we do what is called as bidding. Okay, unlike conventional medium where you know beforehand, okay, I'm going to release a print ad, 1,000 rupees per square centimeter, I pay it. Depending on my negotiation skills, I get more or I get less. Okay, but on online it doesn't work like that. It all depends on your quality scores, how much of page, you know, how much of ranking you get, how much of conversions you get. All of those make a difference to it. So therefore, the search term in circle 1 is very important to you. The search term in circle 4 is not as important. So if you're willing to pay 10 rupees for circle 1, you don't need to pay that kind of money for circle 4, because your conversions will also change. In circle 1, you might be converting at say 10-15%. But in circle 4, you will only convert at about 2% or maybe even lesser. Yeah. So you have to look at what keywords, because on the circle 1 key might also be very expensive. They will be expensive when there is this thing. I will go into that as well. But it will be expensive. So when it's very expensive, you can't really bid on all of it. So there is a theory called the long tail theory in terms of how you choose keywords and how you do it. So you pick a few which are very high traffic keywords, then you choose medium, and then you choose low keywords, because together they will create an ecosystem which will drive better value to you in terms of getting visitors and conversions to your page. So this is something which is a model that we follow, because it helps you do a better campaign. So this works by creating relevant landing pages, relevant ads, and then going on to optimize the campaign and results. Okay, the beautiful part of digital is two things. One, you will actually know the results. Okay, I think in advertising, in conventional advertising, we always say this, you know, I know my advertising works, but I don't know where it worked, how it worked, what worked in it. I have no clue. Including David Ogilvy, there's no answer to that question. But in digital, you actually know what worked and what didn't work. I think we were just talking about A/B testing, etc. So A/B testing is a norm. It's a mandatory thing. When you start any campaign, you write multiple ads, you do multiple banners, you do multiple things, and you deploy. And you set it on what we call as run on rotation. Everything gets an equal amount of opportunity, but over a few days or in a week's time, you'll actually know what is performing, what is not performing, depending on the metric that you actually set. Then you actually kill or eliminate the non-performing ones, and then you add to the ones which are actually performing. So the whole beauty of it is you should be able to continuously optimize and keep working on it so that you get a better ROI. Okay, and digital again is the more you optimize your campaign, your costs keep going down. Okay, at least up to a certain point, it will definitely keep going down. So your cost per acquisition keeps coming down. So analyzing it and continuously monitoring it is a mandatory requirement. So that's the process that it goes through. So you will know which part of my advertising worked and what has given me the result. So you don't have to wonder, did Facebook work for me? Did LinkedIn work for me? Did AdWords work for me? You will be actually able to pinpoint and say this particular messaging and in this particular platform. And we can even go on to say that works for me during weekends between 4 to 6 in the evening. I mean, we've had multiple examples, like I was just talking about this diaper brand, like it's an online purchase brand, but we only get sales from Monday to Fridays. On weekends, there's absolutely nothing that happens on the site. The reason is simple, because we're talking to mothers of newborn kids. I think, they have the time during the weekend, during the week, and because they're possibly staying at home because they've just given birth to a baby, etc. But during the weekends, possibly their parents are there, their husband is back home, they're out. That's the only time they actually get to go out. So they actually don't visit, they don't do any shopping. So you will be able to identify patterns and how people actually behave. There's a lot of behavior that you will notice. Different categories have different behavioral patterns. You need to identify for yourself what is a niche for you, and what works for you. There are certain categories where we only start advertising in the evening, say at 4 o'clock, because otherwise you will be spending a lot of money from the morning, you will get no conversions at all. So you need to understand and then work on it. Based on that, you will be able to get the kind of things. So, yep.
Keywords by the hour.
Yes. You can bid, you can pause, you can schedule it. Yeah, okay. I'll just finish that thing. See, for example, we were running a campaign for Polaris. Agenda was recruitment. Okay, we want to recruit, I think it was Java and .NET programmers. Okay, so that's this thing. And we wanted laterals, which is people with 5+ years of experience to come in. So this campaign used to run, and it basically used to generate resumes and people who are interested in joining the organization. What we realized is that our traffic and leads only peak during the lunch hours, that is between 12 and 3, and then in the evening between 7 and 9. Because I think in most of the organizations that we were looking for people from, they're not permitted to use their internet, their connections, do anything outside of the internet. So then what we realized is spending money through the day is of no use. So we used to run campaigns only during the lunch break and late in the evenings. So we used to actually get more resumes during that period. Yeah.
Either the others, their budgets were running out and only our ads were running. Or the second possibility is that there is more traffic, therefore our ads will become better. In both cases, we don't need to run the campaign every day. So we actually schedule maybe 5% of the advertising in the lean periods. And about 40% of it during the peak periods, the 2 peak periods. So 80% of the money is the peak periods. Another 20% goes on the lean periods. So you can actually schedule your ads during the peak performance time.
Yes. I have a question. Keyword system. So keyword system is mentioned as a core keyword and there are so many keywords. And the core keywords are what is basically directed exactly your site and they're looking for your site.
Not that way. See, everything will direct them to the website or the landing page, wherever. But it's a definition of keywords. Okay. So let's take, for example, something which, let me take for example a B school for example, okay. So B school MBA program, okay, management program, best marketing school, best rated B schools, B school in Chennai, all of these are what we call the core keywords, okay. And let's say that this is for Great Lakes, okay. So Great Lakes is also a part of it, you know, Great Lakes marketing, Great Lakes finance course, all of these would be part of it. So that becomes your core, which means this is a student who is actively looking for an MBA admission program. That's what we're talking about. So that becomes your core. The second is what we call competition. There are students who are possibly looking for ISB, they're going to be looking for an IFMR, they're possibly looking for an IM Indore. There are multiple other B schools they're going to be looking for, yeah. They will also be looking for, let's say, an admission to a Kellogg's, or they're looking at going abroad to study, they're going somewhere to Nanyang, or any of these things. So those are all what we would call define as competition, which means that person is considering an MBA course, but he or she is definitely not looking at you, or they're looking at somebody else. So your messaging, so the thing what happens is you identify them, but you can talk to them differently. So to a person who's searching for Great Lakes, you only need to reassure them and say that, you know, at Great Lakes you'll get to do great things, okay. But let's say there's somebody else who's searching for an ISB and you are Great Lakes, you actually need to say that, you know, why go to ISB? You will get the best of the same facilities possibly in Chennai. Or let's say somebody who's looking at going to an international B school. You can tell them that you will get the same kind of, you will get visiting faculties from abroad coming in here, so therefore you will get it at a much lower cost. Okay, so you can do very specific targeting and specific messaging depending on the keywords. There could be a third circle. The lifestyle category would be, say, somebody who's searching for, say, GMAT, or someone who's looking for an CAT exam results, you know, or CAT exam. So those become your related keywords. Yeah. So it helps you bid and it helps you customize a message to that person who's searching for it. All of them will ultimately go to the same landing page. Of course, that can also be done differently if their interest. In this case, in the example that I've just given, the interest is common. That is getting to know about it. But I think the next one which is coming up, you will see, you don't actually, the destination also changes, you know, depending on which group you belong to. The kind of information that you need to tell that audience changes. So you don't have to give the same message to everybody. Yeah. So
Question here. So reverting to the other insights you got regarding the recruitment thing that
yeah.
that people look at
Yes.
even the other one, the mothers.
Yes.
So these insights you got after you ran a campaign and then you found that thing, or you did an analysis and you found that this is a better.
See, you will definitely have certain indicators for a category before you set a campaign, but you will get it validated the minute you start running the campaign. And in online, in a matter of a few days, in fact in about 3-4 days, you will be able to actually see the patterns. So the insights emerge very fast.
Generally you do a pilot. Okay. And that pilot for a specific period, many of these insights will come. Pilot was an A/B testing.
I have a doubt in the Polaris case study. You said you are pausing the campaign between the keywords. Someone else also bid higher than you. During that time, someone will take it, right? It will be a continuous campaign.
No. So you're going to pause it between this. So let's say there's somebody comes and searches after 4 o'clock. Okay, when you are not advertising, you're not bidding on anything, you're not going to be there. So somebody else will get it.
So the campaign budget will be increased. For example, you company A bid X amount and company B bid some X amount higher than X plus
Yes,
Y.
yes.
So your campaign is 12 to 1 and 4 to 6. So maybe in between you did 12 to 1 and I bid more than you.
During the same 12 to 1 period?
Yeah, after your campaign. Means 4 to 6 you're going in my name. Right? So how do you specifically set a campaign budget?
Okay, let me answer this because there are two different scenarios in this. Okay, the first scenario is when we started, it was a campaign that ran for the full 24 hours, okay? But then you later realize that your conversions, while I'm getting traffic, I'm not converting, okay? Or I'm not even getting the required amount of traffic for me to do a conversion, okay? So basically when I have limited budgets, I need to, what we call a flighting strategy, we focus on, put it during that particular period. So you will make sure that whoever comes during the period, you are visible to them. So you come to them, okay? That's one. So you will be, if somebody overbids you, okay? So during this period, I have already found that this is when I know that it's like, just taking an example of let's say fishing, I know that this is the area which has got maximum amount of fish. I just go put my net into that at that particular point. The chances of me grabbing more fish is higher than trying to go into a larger ocean and try fishing for it. Yeah. So that is what time helps you in terms of time band when you're restricting.
Yeah, in a language that you will understand, there will always be a problem.
No, sir, that's not the answer. Google doesn't do that. You can't outbid. That's not the only metric that Google uses to rank 1, 2, and 3.
Keyword is talking
No, I'm talking about the keyword. It doesn't work like that at all. I mean, you can pay as much money as you want, but if you're not going to do it, you can explain this with an example. Say, Puruswamy is running a campaign for digital marketing and I was running it. And he's paying 10 bucks for the same keyword and I'm going to pay 100 bucks for the keyword. Technically, I should get better ranking than technically, theoretically, at least. That's not true. Let's say 100 impressions are served. His ad gets clicked 12 times. And my ad gets clicked once. Okay, what does Google earn? Google earns 120 bucks from him, despite the fact that he's bidding only 10 bucks. And they only 100 bucks from me, despite the fact that I'm paying higher. So who will Google promote? That's Google has figured this out 15 years ago.
So which is why those relevancy of the ad, the landing page, all of them have to work, which gives you a quality score. So that will actually determine how much you need to bid. So it's not just about the value that you bid. The relevancy makes it. No, price is absolutely no role to play. So the more efficient your campaign becomes, it becomes.
Google guys are extremely smart. Let's get this right. And they are rich only because of that. They have decided, like when Google tells you this is my price, Google tells you tell me what the price you will pay.
You're willing to
You
pay.
always overestimate. The idea is to how do you get that adjustment? That's what it is.
That's the desire you want to get out.
Yes, and in fact that is also the reason, yeah, and that is why we use the model that we were talking about. So you should decide how important or how valuable is that keyword to you. You cannot put an average bid value and say 10 rupees per word. It doesn't make any sense. You have to decide which value is of how much importance to me, and then you decide how much you're willing to bid for it. Which also you will learn over time because, okay, I don't think we're going to talk much about analytics, but you have all the metrics, you have all the data that's available to you, which you will be able to interpret and see that you know what's working and what's really not working for you. So, in this particular,
Can I
yes.
do this advertising without paying for a keyword? I just, if they search for me, they land on my landing page.
That is what we call the SEO, or rather the organic part of it. Yes, you can, but you have to optimize for it.
So if I'm purely B2B in a highly niche space where I don't have competition or have just one or two players, like many of the guys in this are in that situation,
Right.
then is there a case for paying high rates?
Yeah.
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 I can tell you one example. Most of the times when I do a search, first page is mostly ads. So I look for the daily. So I have used Google long back. So a lot of times you have to go to the second or the third page for a very relevant
That
thing.
is,
So now,
sorry, what you are, I think, referring to the kind of search words where there is a lot of competition, there is a lot of traffic. So if most of the guys here are in a very niche area, I mean, there are no 25 competitors kind of a situation. One, two out of, I would be shocked if most of them this concept of buying something may not be relevant. And I'm intentionally raising this, that what is being discussed and taught to us today are concepts. Please figure this out for the kind of business, the kind of go-to market, the kind of competition you have. Am I making sense? Or?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
When I have to, let's say assume that I have to, or maybe there's only one more person who's okay. We wouldn't even recommend advertising for that. Instead, the whole strategy will revolve around one. How she talked about it in the beginning of this Symphony. For example, Symphony as a company, it's breakthrough technology. This is the first of its kind. And nobody has the technology in the world today. Technically, I don't need to advertise, but still we need to advertise because we want to propagate something. But the strategy in those cases, what will happen is, how do we establish that I am an authority in this space? Because the person who's buying is still searching. When they're searching for it, I don't need to necessarily only advertise the result, but how do I get their website to that line? That's one. Two, we'll also do what Professor Swaminathan spoke about, reputation management, where I'll identify blogs, forums, groups, which these people are part of, and I'll start seeing content into that. And those are things which will again lead back, the funnel back to my website. So it may not necessarily be advertising per se, but it's communication in a larger sense.
Yeah, just add to what I think. So I think the challenge most people here in this room are facing is, how do I connect to the customer? So one is from a search angle. The other is, can I go through Facebook? Can I for certain specific, or can I go through LinkedIn? Where if the profile says, well, let's say I am targeting all IIM graduates in this age group, then use a LinkedIn. So
That's right. I was about to tell you, taking on, I explained the concept of poem, paid, owned, earned media. All three are important. I also showed a Venn diagram right there. Okay. First is your website is the heart and soul, and particularly in a situation where you have, let's not say monopoly and oligopoly, with a limited number of players. As Raj said, normally, you don't go for paid advertising, but earned media play a lot of role. What do you mean by earned media? They are the ones where you have generated a content and your content management belongs to white paper, these kind of categories, which you can use. For example, sometimes earned media need not necessarily, if I am willing to put in some amount of money in that, so that funnel it back. So that's why this concept of poem is extremely important. Paid media, yes, you have a lot of competition. Owned and earned media makes a lot of sense when you are in a global situation. That must be taken. Gopal is
There's also a specific solution which she's going to speak about. That's why I'm deliberately not speaking about it. Let her take it.
Yeah, okay. So I think I'll run through this a bit quickly.
So I think while we've spoken a lot about the search part of it, the paid part of it, okay, this is a specific thing which is more on the SEO part of it, okay. So on search engine optimization, there's a lot of jargon that you'll keep hearing, from schema markup to snippets to H1 tags, alt tags, image tags, page links, etc., etc. These are all different tools, techniques, methods that are used, okay. But I think fundamentally there's only one small thing we should remember and understand is SEO is not, it's not great hi-fi thing. It's simply that, it's a lot of small things, but it has to be done very well, okay. When we say done very well, I think when a search engine, I think you should just remember it, I think I should just explain it as a concept of, let's say that you enter a library. When you walk into a library, there is an index which very clearly tells you what are the categories of books, where is what available, who's the author, what is the detail, everything is available. Therefore, it's easy for you to find what you're looking for, okay? In the case of SEO, that is exactly what you need to do. When a Google bot or a crawler comes into your site, it should be able to find what is that you're trying to do there. So you should be able to clearly state, so you need to have, the reason we keep talking about keywords, page titles, page descriptors, all of this is actually not meant for the humans who we are, it's not meant for us. It's for this Google bot or this crawler which is coming into your site. It should really know what is it that this website contains. It should know that this site is about, let's say it's about waste bins that are being, intelligent bins that are being created. It should give you information so that the crawler knows what is the site on. Let's say I just put an image which says image 01. It does not know what it is. It just skips saying there's nothing. But instead if you said this is an intelligent waste bin, so when somebody searches for intelligent waste bin, your web image will actually come up there. So it's about very clearly indexing and mapping out and stating that this is what this website contains, so that the bot which is crawling it will be able to understand. So in simple words, that is what actually really needs to be done. Now SEO is done in terms of two parts. So I think I just spoke about this. So because Google's policy is very, very simple. They say, every time I send somebody to your website, it's actually that I'm sending my customer to you. So I want you to make sure that you take very good care of them, which is the reason why they penalize you if your page takes too much time to load, it has too much of scripts, the data is not organized in it, all of that you get penalized. They will not send customers back to you a second time. Okay, so which is why you need to make sure that you meet the requirements that are there, and I think there are enough tools today for you to go and check out how your website is performing, getting graded in terms of it, and then actually address them. So in terms of, so I think I just spoke about it. So you need to understand all these things and then you need to implement them. This is all what we call on page. There's another part which we call the off page, which is about creating backlinks and creating multiple links back to different places of authority. So since we are talking about a lot of B2B cases and things like that, you need to see how you get connected to multiple other pages which are related to you, so that you start gaining authority for those pages. Okay, once you start doing that, your rankings will go up and therefore you will start coming up in links, in search terms, etc.
In simple terms, for example, you write a blog. How do you write a blog? What keywords are really important? Okay, that's why supposing you post something in LinkedIn, you should ask, it asks. And in fact, it gives you some suggestions. That's exactly.
Right. You want something to come to you, you must be very clear. That concept that you provide helps in search using text, vis-a-vis competition, or generic. So everybody says I'm a blogger. Okay. So just writing something. And these are outside the body of the blogging. Which are very important. Which are the answers for a period of time.
Well, that is a little bit of optimization. I'm just moving on to more on
micro-targeting, and this is more on Facebook. Okay, this is an example. I mean, I'm sure if you live in Chennai, you must have heard of a brand called Specs Makers, which is it's an optical retail brand. Okay, so now Specs Makers is into multiple. They sell prescription glasses to people. Now, one of the things is, I think what's happening is with a lot of AI that's kind of coming into play and a lot of algorithms that are going around, you actually know who's the consumer, what are they doing, everything about the person is actually available. Like we were saying, like I think Professor Swaminathan was saying, Google, Apple, Facebook actually know everything about you, what you're doing, how you're behaving, everything is known to them. So that actually gives us an opportunity as business and marketeers that, you can actually talk to very specific people with very specific messages. Okay. So these are things which are becoming very relevant, and I think it's very relevant from a B2B segment. Okay. So for example, we have a product which is called Blue Pro lenses. Okay, I'm sure all of you must have heard of it. Or basically, every time you look at gadgets, there are blue rays which get emitted, which affect your eyes. So there is a solution called a Blu-ray Protect or a Blu-ray Blocker. So if you wear them, it kind of prevents your eye from getting damaged. Okay, if so, there are very specific set of people. So if you look at this, there are different genres of people who actually have a need for the solution. Okay, so to begin with, there are a huge set of IT professionals. They are constantly keyed on to their system and they are looking for it. You know, they are constantly on a programming mode. They are looking for something. So they are in front of a system for more than 12 hours to 16 hours a day. Then you have others who are computer oriented, like, you know, there are like people in my office who are design guys, okay, they are designers. They are also working on a system constantly. There are so many other professions. There are bankers who are all sitting in front of a system and doing things. So there's a huge set of them. Then we have gaming enthusiasts. I think the guys who are addicted to gaming are addicted to gaming. They are constantly in front of the console. They just spend so much of hours doing it. You have people who are avid readers, who are also today moved from the physical book into reading on gadgets and things. Then you have college goers who are constantly looking up something, chatting, video call. There's a lot of conversation. But if you look at them, they're all different people. They don't actually do same things. They are in no way connected. So, but it's a common product that can talk to different people.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And I think you were asking about, mine is a solution which caters to so many people. Yes, it caters, but then it caters to them in a particular way. So if you look at, for example, on this is on Facebook, you can actually target. You can say IT and technical services. There is a group of them, and I think there's close to about 1.6 million people who are available on this group. You can actually target them and talk to them. There's a group called Gaming Enthusiasts, where you can even go down to picking which game they play, what they do, etc. There are about 28 million odd people who are available for that. Okay, so if you actually go and look at it, you can do job title based targeting. You can go look for a digital marketing person. You can look for it. So you can look for a procurement manager. You can look for very specific things and you will find them. Okay, so you can do it here, you can do it in LinkedIn, in multiple spaces you will find them. So you need to find the space which actually works for you. But the most important part is not just finding them, you also need to speak to them with a very specific message. Like for example, the first one you see is talking to a computer professional. So it's saying, you know, it's talking about a problem they have, which is about a dry eye syndrome. So technically they feel that their eyes get dried out very fast, so they need it. So it talks to them. A gamer is something that we talk about, a red eye. So they basically game and then their eyes are very blurry. This is about talking to a college kid who's like, you know, texting all the night because I've got something that I'm doing. Yeah, from under the bed sheet. This is a very typical habit. So you need to connect to them. Your messaging has to tell me, yeah, oh, this person is talking to me. When I know it's talking to me, then I'll sit up and I'll listen to you. Otherwise, I just ignore you and I move on. So identifying the group and giving them the message that's the most relevant is the most critical thing. So this is an example of that. So you need to actually talk about that.
One sec. Note that. You see, that's what is called a why now. That is the CPA.
Yeah.
It's extremely important. Supposing you remove by now, you are doing the solution. You are saying dry eyes. Okay, you're putting technical, yeah, sure. But then I will see this and go to somebody else in my okay. It's extremely important. Now, this is a kind of a design issue which combines action with so mirror that data.
Yes.
So these images will reach the person after they visit the site of Stretchmakers or in between
So
videos.
let's say this is on Facebook, whatever the data I showed you is on Facebook.
So based on my interest, okay, when I am a person who's on Facebook, my interests are there, okay. So there are again different forms of advertising that's available to you. So I can say, let's say I do a boost post, okay. So then I know that this person is a gaming enthusiast, okay, and I only target it to them. So this particular ad will appear on their feed. Yeah. So you can choose. Yes, it can be, yes. And so if it comes there, you're most likely to the person, to that individual.
Bottom one will only go to the college students. That one will only go to people who are highly interested. So it goes to them. You not have visited this
Any format. Yes.
will YouTube will come through YouTube. If I run it on Facebook, it will run on Facebook. Even where we are running it.
Yeah, that is something you need to find out, but these options are available across most mediums today. I mean, like you can do it on YouTube, you can do it on search, you can do it on Facebook, but you need to find the niche and then actually talk to them and then speak to them only. The beauty is that you say different things to different people. You don't have to say the same thing, which is what we end up doing in press, and therefore we assess it from the quantum of wastage. You know, I'm talking to, let's say, MBA students are looking for admission. It's only 2% of the audience, but the remaining 98 also see it. But when I do it here, I only talk to the 2% who are interested in me. So I'm actually willing to spend more because I can actually target them. In fact, that's how it works also. When I set the campaign as 18 to 45, let's say my cost or whatever, my cost per view, let's say on YouTube, will be like 15 paisa. But the minute I do a targeting, it will jump to 1 rupee. But it's worth it. You need to evaluate it from that point of view to see what really gives you the kind of result that you're looking for. It's not that, okay?
Is there any specific analytical tool which gives the exact user detail who visited your site?
What is, see,
Because as of now, I get the reports on the basis of the demography and if there is any tool which gives the exact user detail,
what is user detail defined as?
like the social profiles or something like that.
Social profiles, no, you will not get it because that will kind of intervene with the privacy of the person and things like that, so it won't come into those. But you will know the kind of groups or their interests or the areas of this thing. It will give you the kind.
Geography,
We get site users into our sites. But we get the analytical report on the basis of their other analytical
details, whatever it is there. But I need the exact detail of the user.
What do you mean exactly? That's the question.
You know, any profile that the social profiles, like Facebook profiles or LinkedIn profile, those are the
Which is why all those lead forms, logins, all
the
those
logins
come into,
we have
that's what I was
social
coming
logins.
to, yeah.
So that
Yes, you can. So which is basically only on a person's consent you will get that information. You cannot get general information, and that goes into a privacy violation and all of those things. So you will get general patterns, and typically these are becoming, with the kind of intelligence that we are seeing, they are becoming even more and more robust because you see the conversions going up. You know, earlier technically, like Professor Swami was saying, it used to be like 3%, 4%, but when we get into these very focused campaigns, we even see 15%, 16% conversions. So it really depends on how it gets targeted. Yeah,
I have one question.
please.
Very interesting. But recently I have seen
Amazon Prime Video is advertising in banners. NBK now running. Similarly, Netflix is running a lot of ads and Prime Video also on TV. I thought they would do at all. No, they won't go into banners on roads.
You mean you're seeing outdoor is what you're saying?
Clearly. So what would be, where do you think, what does actually mean?
That is purely about
Getting reach. They are really trying to go really wide. Come watch me.
They're using
see, the other thing is, please remember, time and again I repeat it, only in what will not work. Right? You have to have both home and home. Okay, because either model still works. So let us use this action. You to create awareness. Right? If I am not a Facebooker, my wife is not a Facebooker. Okay, she is likely to see your TV commercial, right? Or a serial. So I need to do that.
See, I think in conventional marketing we call it the media multiplier effect. Okay.
I don't think you can only say that I'll be only present on one medium and I'm not going to do anything. But in cases like B2B, etc., I think there are very focused mediums. See, you need to evaluate from which media gives me better ROI from that perspective. Yeah, and the kind of industry and the business you are in. So if you get into FMCG where you want to reach out to large masses of people, the larger mediums help. Though, digital also kind of complements. We are seeing a huge growth in terms of the numbers, etc. Yeah. So just two more things I just want to touch upon in terms of practical implementation. This example that I'm going to show is actually about influencers, or rather, I think what it's about advocacy. You know, we've been talking about it's not enough if you just buy my product. You actually have to go and tell others that, you know, it's fantastic, give reviews, share reviews, etc. And now there is this whole crop of influencers who are kind of coming into play, which is people who are serious fashion bloggers, who are serious people who write reviews, give you product reviews, and when you read about it, you believe that it's more authentic. Okay, I'm not saying that there are people who made it into a profession, but a lot of reviews and articles and ratings definitely help because people believe in it. Okay, and that's how the world is moving. While this example I'm going to show is for a FMCG product, it's a face cream. Sorry. Yes, and giving the message on why you should buy me. There's a difference between, see, okay.
No wonder, that is where, okay, here, if I have a red eye, my solution is buy Blue Pro. I can buy from Burakia, I can buy from Templators,
a number of people. Okay, just go to influencers. Right. That is where I use influencers. Right. Because whatever I say as a company, I'll be believed less than supposing you say. Right? Yes, as a user, or see, that is where the testimonials and influencing comes
into play.
Right? Although I might have paid to write such a review, the consumer does not know that it is a paid review. But then the consumer believes a third party review more than the company review.
So in B2B, etc., it works beautifully because you have industry experts, you have users of it, you have people who applied users of it, multiple cases where they come in and do reviews. Like for example, even in cases of cars, bikes, etc., reviews are mandatory. Without those, nobody actually looks at them. So I mean,
this is in a category, but it's very relevant. I mean, this is a case like a face cream. You can just Google it up. It's actually reviews by different people. In fact, it's gone on so this thing that, you know, outside of the influencers, people buy the product, click pictures, take videos, and then they put it up. So it's like it's something, and it's kind of gone all over the place in terms of reviews and done in languages, multiple kind of things. While it was started as a simple influencer campaign, we just had some 10 people doing it to begin with, but it kind of became something that everybody had to do it because there's also a competition between them on how it works, how it reviews, etc.
But like in the case of FMCG and all that, this would be of more relevance. But here, from people who are coming out of incubation and startups, who are coming out with their own technologies, with their influences.
so for example, I'm just going to take.
Can I answer this question? Yes. See, this is where white papers have gone left.
Yes.
Okay, and it's appropriate because then you don't talk about your own company. You talk about the technology, the benefits of the technology, and therefore what value you get.
So the broad.
Yes.
Yeah, white papers,
Yeah.
blogs,
Like in
information.
a case like Symphony, we have there are neurologists, there are therapists who write about how they've seen this working on a patient, the outcome of it,
You could be
etc.
having some people like influencers for
No, no. So this is not necessarily influencer. See, influencers are in categories where you want to give it a trigger, but there are genuine people who do reviews. Like for
We
example,
also do not know who are our influencers. Supposing we are in healthcare.
No, that is why you started first.
Okay.
You start
You
it
start.
first and then say, okay, that is where you get your login credentials, you fill up your details, we will send you a report. We will send you a latest report, okay, which otherwise you cannot, get without payment. Here I am sending it to you free. Or attend my webinar. There is going to be a webinar by such and such expert in this particular field. We will talk about the technology and its benefits. So that is also kind of influencing. Influencing does not mean only a testimonial. See, that is why content is extremely important.
So we used to run a report and post systems. Talking like 20 years ago. We didn't know this word like qualify somebody to buy an ERP solution in MSSP, very organized. Somebody was sitting there, I don't know, I don't even know the cost. And that's what we used to do. We had ran a campaign. They came to my side, they just put the email ID. And depending on, we also started becoming a little more savvier and started slicing the thing. Like, this is your problem, download. This is what it is. So we also used to have what part of the sales funnel will they fit in. So those kind of slicing happened as we went on. When we started off with just a white paper download, we also started slicing the audiences depending on which part of the sales funnel will they fall into, and therefore how will they convert and so on. So you create things as we go along. That's what he's talking about. So influencer needs not be just somebody writing about things. It can just be a plain white paper that I don't let them download directly, but I just pick up their email ID so I can talk to them later. And it's emailed to them. So email gets validated, I know who is the person. Lots of benefits. I'm talking about 20 years ago we used to do this.
And okay, so this is the last of it, and so this is the last one. I thought we should leave it with a little bit of an entertainment and a fun note, okay? While this is on the fun note, I think it's a subject which is very relevant to everyone. Like, for example, I think she was talking about intelligent waste bins and waste management. So say a World Environment Day is a great day to do something important, or create awareness among people. So that's a day you should pick up and you should definitely do something about it. Like that, I'm sure in each of your verticals or your spaces you will have something which is relevant to the audience that you are talking to. So you need to find that and then do something about it, so you become a point of conversation, and therefore it at least help you create awareness. It may not lead to an immediate sale, but you are going to be in people's conscience or in your TG's conscience that there is this product or there is this solution that exists. So they will think about you whenever they have a need for it. Yeah.
Not only that, over a period of time, then you become the leader. Lead opinion maker.
Yeah.
Right? It mounts to do that. Okay. That's why it's a long term. So then, never leave that.
Yeah, so this is an example of something for CK's Bakery. Okay, so CK's Bakery is a relatively new outlet. I mean, they're like a less than 3 years old. This thing. So the whole thing was, CK's Bakery is all about cakes. So the whole agenda was whenever somebody celebrates, we want people to be thinking about CK's Bakery and therefore order a cake from us. That was a simple agenda where it kind of started. So the thing was, can we actually so there was a launch of Kala that happened exactly at that point. So we said we can't really do anything much about it from, this thing. So it was a simple thing that actually happened. So we ran a contest, but I think the bigger thing was we had a cake. Okay, I don't think you can see it here. You can see this video. So there was it's a live video. I don't think we'll see it, but we had a 50 kg cake that was made and that was cut on first day first show at Rohini Theatre at I think at some 2 o'clock in the morning for all, 1:30 in the morning, so you can see it. So it was like a crazy fan following that actually happened on it. So it was like, trending the next 2 days in terms of what it was and stuff like that. So it's a simple case just to say that anything that's happening around you, you just need to find that opportunity to see how you can leverage for you. That's the power of most of these mediums.
Use outbound methods. Right? Okay. Because it's a very short span. You have to use that short span to leverage.
Okay. I remember I called him at 9 o'clock in the morning. He said, sorry sir, I can't talk to you because I had this Kala thing. Right? And we were the whole night preparing for it.
Yeah, the whole thing was about you had to stream it. I mean, so you have to
No, it was
capture
an
it.
offline
Right?
event. We actually live streamed it on Facebook, and the whole thing was trending the world next day. Yeah, not as much as Kala, but we got what we wanted.
Yeah, but interestingly, we also sold about 800 odd cakes during that period for that particular event. So therefore it actually went. Okay, so just to quickly summarize, therefore, is that there's no one size fits all. There is no single solution that's going to fit everybody. So you need to really find your own spaces. So depending on the kind of product, the service that you offer, or the audience that you're actually targeting, the kind of state of mind, the need, the occasion, you really need to find out who's that audience and then the kind of market you're looking for, and then you need to kind of create a strategy for yourself. So it actually goes back to the same fundamentals of marketing, which is identify your customer and then find out ways and means to reach out and connect with them.
So that's what it is. So I think now if there's any questions, we can talk about it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jasi.
Thank you. Yes, please. Yes, please.
Let's say we want to listen to B2B space and let's say a hypothetical question that we want to reach out to, let's say 10,000 B2B decision makers and expect the business for about 100 hits, 100 conversions over a period of years. Can you give us a ballpark number as to how much it costs, or for that matter, how much people would charge us?
Oh, thank you. I don't think that question can be answered.
Yeah, as simply as that.
Any business case.
Ah.
It can't be answered.
Okay, so just a budgetary estimate as to what is the range that a startup can look at as to how much investment they must to make, let's say they want to get on to this kind of business.
See, it really depends on the
Category and the product that you need, but I think
No, just pre-assumes that first they have a robust solution.
yeah, it pre-assumes all that.
Probably will include the website design also.
That's what I'm saying. So there are several components to it. So what you really will have to do is, I'll tell you what, digital campaigns are not all that expensive as compared to your outbound. And each one will have a nuance. What you probably need to do is sit with an agency, okay, across the table. And what is very important is giving them a brief, a good brief, meaning that look what your problem is, what are the pain points, particularly in B2B. Pain points are extremely important. What pain points does your offering, product or service address? Okay, and then the whole list of targeted industry, because B2B classically you are an intermediate. Okay, demand is derived demand. Right? Then what happens is, based on your brief and what kind of, let's say results that you're looking for, deliverables, it can be suited, tailor-made. At that point in time, the agency, yes, will also give you options. One option is, yeah, you can spend ₹1 million. Okay, or it can be done at $500,000 or $2 million.
See, the other thing, the beauty of this is that you can, let's say, start only with Chennai, only with Tamil Nadu, and see the result, then grow it. So get some revenue. So it's not like taking an ad in the Hindu. Even there you have an option. You can take only Chennai edition, you can take the other edition. But the wastage is significantly less. And at a low cost, you are able to sort of refine the thing. Do you agree with that?
It's called a great level up. It actually.
Actually, the second what he's saying, the difference between mainline and online advertising is something that in mainline advertising, I have put an ad on television, I have spent the money. In online, you are not only refining along the way, but if my response explodes, I can switch off the campaign and say nothing. If my response is thick, I need to increase it, we can also increase the intensity. Symphony that she just spoke about, we started the campaign like 20 days ago.
Yeah.
And I saw a report this morning from the client, and we've had about 75 odd conversions. And while the client is saying, no, I want more, and we are saying, no, I want to hold you back. So it depends on how you play it and how. There's no one size fits all. That's the last night that she put down. I'm saying there's no one size fits all. It can't be the same model for everybody. It needs a lot more.
I'll just add, they're not going to give you a number, but they're very good people. I think fantastic presentation. You can meet them, and you can then offline get some figures, some ideas, and all that.
So the other thing is, I'll tell you, I'm not I don't run an agency, I'm a academic. You'll have a lot of fight in that. But then the deliverables will be very high. Because without Tarkam, nothing will happen.
So essentially what you're saying is, look, being startup, they don't have their own specialization in terms of marketing. So suggesting that they go to an agency rather than, do it on their own. Right?
Well, if you do it on your own, by trial and error, you will kind of, you'll get hurt.
Yeah, precisely that. I mean, Optima kind of people are the people to go to. And it's very interesting that a Singapore firm has come to them, because I know a Singapore firm which is very big, but who charge probably 10 times more. It's not that Singapore doesn't have direct marketing companies. So my suggestion to everybody would be, each one of you is in a startup in a different way. Go and meet them. I think she's going to give you a card or whatever it is. Please talk to them on the phone, go and meet them, find out.
Well, you should go and see what you should do is don't restrict yourself to just one agency. Then you go and, explore. Right? The same brief, you go and explore 2 or 3 different people. You will get to know what the thinking is, what the philosophy is, and how involved they are. That's very, very important. The involvement of the manager. Since 2008, 11 years. Right.
And we all believe in this thing, the more the knowledge you share, the more you learn, because I think sometimes when every time you ask questions,
Great Lakes was
it makes
unknown
you think
institution.
further.
That is the time when we worked together.
Yes.
Right? And in a very short span of time, became in the top 10. So that's what I mean. You should work very closely. It's not an agency-client relationship. It goes much beyond it.
Actually, you need people who are constantly thinking about you. That's actually what you need. Like I just
remember in Great Lakes when we started working, it was never called Great Lakes. It used to be called GLIM. So the first time we met, we said, sorry, we can't be called GLIM. With a name like GLIM, who will want to join you?
Sorry, by the way, I have 2 copies of books that are around. Please kindly return it to me because they're not for sale, right? You can have a look at it. It's available in Amazon, right? You can order it from.
Sorry? Yes.
sorry.
Thank you, dear.
Yes. If you want to do even Google AdWords, give you a keyword
Boss,
generator.
one thing I can tell you, going and meeting them and having a discussion will not cost you any money. So, I'm telling you.
So on behalf of the incubation cell and alumni association of IIT Madras, thank you Professor Fernandez for coming here.
Ladies first.
Giving us such an engaging session on digital marketing.
Well, I'm also a part of your IIT Alumni Club. Okay, I'm a member.